So this says to factor completely, and always step one is to see if there's anything common among all three terms. And when I look at 15, 21, and 18, they all can be divided by 3. So they definitely have that in common. But also the W's, they have a lot of W's in common. They all have at least 4. So the common thing is 3W to the 4th power. That's what they have in common. And so we'll pull that out of each term. We'll divide it out. And what we have left in the first term is a 5W squared. Second term, we'd have a positive 7W. Third term, we'd have a negative 6 left. Now, since we pulled that out in step 1, we're going to bring that down and prepare our answer to include that. So when we factor what was left over, we'll fill in those 2 parentheses. So now that we pulled that first part out, remember that does not have any other purpose anymore. It's just down here in the answer. We're only going to focus on what's in the parentheses. So this is what we're going to factor now. And so step 2 is multiply the first and last. So we have a positive 5 times a negative 6, the first and the last being multiplied. That gives us a negative 30. And then step 3 says, now list the factors of that 30. No, we're not worried about the negative. We're just 30. So 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4 doesn't work, but 5 times 6 works. We've listed all the sets. Now we're going to put the signs on the largest ones. So we go back to the problem. The sign of the middle term goes on the largest one in each set. So since the middle term is positive, that means all of my large numbers in my set of factors are positive. And then step 5 says, figure out what the sign of the small numbers should be. Well, you decide that by saying, hey, these guys have to multiply to make this. I have a positive 30 times something will give me negative 30. And you can test it on your calculator if you want, but a positive times a negative gives you a negative. So that means all the small ones have to be negative. Step 6 says, look for the set that when you add it together, it equals the middle term. Well, my middle term is a positive 7. So I'm looking at all these sets, and the one that equals a positive 7 when you add it together is the positive 10 and negative 3. And so this is going to be used to rewrite the middle term. It's not going to be a 7W anymore. It's going to be a negative 3W and a positive 10W. So we'll rewrite that as the 2 terms because remember, this was the answer to FOIL, and we're breaking it down to what was the original F, O, I, and L. And we found that when we said we have a negative 3W and a positive 10W, that replaced the middle term. And then we still have the last in each set and the first that stays the same. So we were able to break down the middle term into these 2. So step 8 says cut this thing in half and factor by grouping. So just like we did up here where we said, oh, look at all 3 terms and see if there's anything in common. And we said they could all be divided by 3 and they all had W to the 4th. We're going to have that same idea. Is there anything common? And what we have left we'll put in parentheses. So what I see that these 2 have in common is just a W. And when you remove that W, divide it out of both of those, you have a 5W minus 3 left over. Over here, we do the same thing. Both of these can be divided by 2, and since the first term's positive, it will be a positive 2. They don't both have a W, so we're just going to do the 2, and when you divide out that 2 from both of those, you have 5W minus 3. And as always, these parentheses will match because now at this stage of 8, we have to say, well, what was common to the whole problem on both sides? What do we see the same? Well, that was the 5W minus 3 we saw that was the same. So if you get rid of those, what do you have left? You have W and you have a positive 2. So W and positive 2. And so it can be written this way, or we have 3 factors to this problem. We have the 3W to the 4th power. We can write it as W plus 2 and 5W minus 3. So we could have switched the order of the parentheses like this, but either one of these is correct.